Same thing as the last facts video, no long intro, just like and subscribe if you like this video. Let's get into it. The NFL awards bonus pay to players based on their performance during the season. So as a result of tearing his Achilles on the 4th snap of the 2023 NFL season, Aaron Rodgers earned the lowest amount of incentive pay in the entire league that season. He took home a whopping $81.14. A story went down in the books that after trading their star quarterback in 1958, Bobby Lane, who was traded from the Detroit Lions, said the Lions wouldn't win anything for another 50 years. Now, whether or not he actually said this is disputed, but what isn't disputed is that the fans believed it. So they entered the 2008 season with a new hope that their 50 years of losing is finally over. But instead of that, they ended up becoming the first NFL team to go 0-16. Don't even worry about it, boys. You'll get them next year. Oh. Xavier Worthy made headlines by setting the record for the fastest ever recorded 40-yard dash in NFL Combine history, and showed off his speed from the very first touch he had in the NFL.
It wasn't inside the opening. This is the speedy man, Xavier Worthy, the fastest man to the end zone right away!
But the second part to this is the slowest recorded 40-yard dash ever ran at the NFL Combine, and this was by Regis Crawford, a former offensive lineman for Arizona State. Now here's the crazy part. He was just under 2 seconds slower than Worthy. Not even 2 seconds is the defining factor between the fastest and slowest time. And when you put into perspective that this is an interior lineman versus a wide receiver, that's pretty crazy. Daniel Jones was the New York Giants' primary starting quarterback from 2022 to 2024. In that time, he went 672 days between throwing a pass touchdown at the Giants' home stadium. And in between that 672 days, the Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls. During World War II, many NFL teams lost a huge chunk of their players to military service. And as a result of this shortage of football players, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles merged the remaining of both of their teams and created a brand new team, the Steagles. That's not a joke, look that up. Including the playoffs, the 1999 Jacksonville Jaguars finished the season with 15 wins and 3 losses. All 3 losses, 2 in the regular season and 1 in the AFC Championship game, were to the Tennessee Titans. College football fans generally understand how one-of-a-kind Colorado wide receiver / cornerback Travis Hunter played. But here's a stat that truly ices the cake. He's the only college football player of at least the past 25 years with 50 catches on offense and 3 interceptions on defense in the same season. Oh, and how could I forget? He's done this twice. Yo Murphy, that's his name by the way, I'm not just saying hi to Murphy, but if your name's Murphy and you're watching this, what's going on? Is the only player to have played in college football, the NFL, Canadian Football League, XFL, and NFL Europe League. TeamRankings.com has been tracking the amount of fair catches NFL punt returners make in a season since 2011. The only player to lead the league in fair catches 3 times since then, and possible GOAT of not returning punts, is Braxton Berrios. Not returning punts lands you a celebrity girlfriend, I suppose. The biggest point spread in NFL history was for a 2013 game between the Denver Broncos and the Jacksonville Jaguars, where the Broncos were 26.5 point favorites, with some sportsbooks even going as high as 28. Hey, Jacksonville covered though, only losing by 16. But the biggest spread in college history was for a 2012 game between Florida State and Savannah State, where FSU was favored by an unthinkable 70.5 points. Savannah State covered in this game too, only losing 55-0. Suge Knight played 2 real live official NFL games as a defensive end for the Los Angeles Rams in 1987. That's right, the same Suge Knight that co-founded Death Row Records and never did anything absolutely horrible. Ever. The NFL once had a team called the Boston Yanks from 1944 to 1948. And to make this even more repulsive to Boston sports fans who already had to call their football team the Yanks, they also played their games at Fenway Park, meaning these were probably the only times the town of Boston ever packed the stands at Fenway to go cheer for their beloved Yanks. From the 1970s to the 2010s, 4 NFL teams went to the conference championship game in every decade. These teams were the Pittsburgh Steelers, Denver Broncos, LA/St. Louis Rams, and Minnesota Vikings. The first 3 of those teams combined for 10 Super Bowl wins, and the Vikings didn't ever win one. The Raiders are the only team in NFL history to have drafted both a kicker and a punter in the first round, and both worked out. They drafted kicker Sebastian Janikowski in the first round in 2000, and he'd be their kicker for the next 18 seasons, and at one point held the record for the longest field goal in NFL history. They also drafted punter Ray Guy in the first round in 1973, and he would go on to become the first punter to enter the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Ray Guy. What a sick name. And by the way, Janikowski isn't the only kicker drafted in the first round in NFL history. It's actually happened 5 times, with the highest pick ever used on a kicker being 6th overall, when Washington drafted Charlie Gogolak 6th in the whole draft in 1966. Offensive lineman Bobby Singh is the first and only player to have won a Super Bowl, a Grey Cup, which is the championship of the Canadian Football League for those who are unaware, and an XFL championship. Patrick Mahomes holds the record for most yards in a game in college history, racking up an unthinkable 819 all-purpose yards for Texas Tech against Oklahoma in 2016. 734 were passing yards, and 85 more were rushing yards. And the craziest part about this fact to me is that Texas Tech somehow still lost this game by a touchdown. Marcus Mariota is believed to be the only quarterback to ever throw a touchdown to himself in NFL playoff history during a game where he led the Tennessee Titans to an AFC wildcard game win in January 2018 against the Chiefs. Similarly, Josh Allen is the most recent quarterback to throw a touchdown to themselves in the NFL.
Pitched it back to Allen, who's going to go to the goal line and get in! No!
In that snowy game against the 49ers in December 2024, he also became the first player in 81 years to have a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown in the same game. The first since Tony Canadeo did it for the 1943 Green Bay Packers. Justin Jefferson holds the record for most receiving yards through 4 seasons in NFL history. He's also the youngest to ever lead the NFL in catches and receiving yards in a single season. If you ever thought the early Cincinnati Bengals looked a lot like the Cleveland Browns, it's because the man who created the Bengals was the same man the Browns were literally named after and who built them into a coherent franchise too. So in that way, the Bengals exist because the man who built them got fired from the team that he's literally the namesake for. The coldest Super Bowl ever played was Super Bowl VI in New Orleans back in 1972. So yes, a Super Bowl in New Orleans was colder than the outdoor Super Bowl played in New Jersey in 2014, where it was 10 degrees warmer that night. Lamar Jackson is both the only player in NFL history with a 200 passing yard plus 150 rushing yard game, and the only player in NFL history with 4 different games having a perfect passer rating. Every 4 years, there's an international football tournament, not that one, of players 20 years old or younger. And in the most recent one that took place during the summer of 2024, Canada beat Brazil in one of the games, 110-0. Brock Purdy is the only QB to ever be picked last in the draft and make a Pro Bowl. But he's got a long way to go to become the Mr. Irrelevant that plays in the most games though. Former Chiefs, Titans, and Bucs kicker Ryan Suckups got him beat by over 170 NFL games as of today. Every one of these following cities used to have an NFL team in the 1920s. Kenosha, Wisconsin, Muncie, Indiana, Hartford, Connecticut, LaRue, Ohio, Staten Island, New York, and Tonawanda, New York. The only 7-foot tall player in NFL AFL history was Richard Sly, a defensive tackle who played for the Oakland Raiders in 1967. He measured 7 foot exactly, and the second tallest was Matt O'Donnell, who measured 6'11". The 2021 New England Patriots had a Pro Bowl quarterback in rookie Mac Jones. They won a game against the Buffalo Bills that season where he, and by extension the whole team, only threw 3 passes the entire night. The Dallas Cowboys, who play in the biggest football hotbed state in the country, didn't hold training camp in Texas until 1990. From 1960 to 1989, they had their training camps in Oregon, Minnesota, Michigan, and California. Never once in Texas. In 1980, Green Bay Packers kicker Chester Marcol kicked a game-winning touchdown to himself. This is real.
He gets his ball back. Boom. Look at here, and off he goes to the races.
Only one school in Division I college football history has more championships than the University of Alabama, and it may not be a name you're expecting for this. Yale University. Alabama has 15 official titles and Yale has 18. Sure, they haven't won in almost 100 years, but I mean, it still counts, right? LaDainian Tomlinson scored more touchdowns in 2006 than 4 NFL offenses did in all of 2023. When CJ Stroud led the Houston Texans to a playoff win against the Browns in January 2024, he became the youngest starting quarterback to win an NFL playoff game. 22 years, 3 months, and 10 days old. And the quarterback he beat in that game was 3 days away from turning 39. The Washington NFL team that has gone by way too many names these last few years has been around since 1932. Only last year, 2023, did they have their first wide receiver ever with 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. His name is Terry McLaurin. 91 straight years of football without a single receiver in team history that was good for that long. Caleb Williams set the Chicago Bears rookie record for passing yards in just 11 games played. With that record-breaking number being 2,193 coming into the season, that says a lot more about the Bears' rookie QB history than anything. For the past 2+ decades now, no offensive lineman has finished in the top 10 of Heisman Trophy voting. The most recent is offensive tackle Bryant McKinney at Miami, who came in 8th place in 2001. David Tyree, who many people think made the greatest catch in NFL history during Super Bowl 42 against the New England Patriots to help crash down their push for the first ever 19-0 NFL season, never had a single catch in NFL after this. Not a single catch. There used to be a device called a dicker rod that football experimented with using instead of having a chain crew. It was 3 yards long, first introduced in college football in 1970, and brought back for the World Football League in 1974 before being totally gone from the game by 1975. Can we get an F in the comments for the dicker rod? We salute you, good sir. Terrelle Pryor holds the record for the longest touchdown run by a quarterback in NFL history at 93 yards, doing so for the Raiders against the Steelers in 2013. But that may not even be the craziest thing he's done in his career. 2 years after this, he converted to a full-time wide receiver, and in his first ever full season as a wide receiver, ever at any level of football, he had a 1,000-yard receiving season for the Cleveland Browns, one of just 25 receivers in the history of NFL to ever do that. The original version of the XFL famously had something called a scramble instead of a coin toss, where 2 players would basically race at full speed to pick up the ball first for the same right other football teams would get by winning the coin toss. And on the second XFL scramble ever, one of the 2 players involved separated his shoulder and missed the entire season. The league itself only lasted for that 1 season, and this poor guy lost out on playing in it in the opening scramble. Every year from 1946 to 1995, the Rams played in a stadium that was also at one point the full-time home for a Major League Baseball team. The LA Coliseum hosted them from 1946 to 79, and again from 2016 to 2019 as well. Then they played in the Angels Stadium, which they still use to this day, by the way, from 1980 to 1994, before moving to St. Louis and playing at the original Busch Stadium for 4 games in 1995. So basically what I'm getting at here is the Rams are closeted baseball lovers. Sorry, I don't make the rules. The 2014 Chiefs had 0 receiving touchdowns by their wide receivers for the entire season. Michael Vick is the only qualified player in NFL history to retire with an average of 7 yards per carry. Oh, and of course this man was also a freak of a quarterback who once passed for 428 yards in a game as a 33-year-old. The University of Miami holds the record for the longest home winning streak in college football history, racking up 58 straight wins at home from 1985 to 1994. In Week 2 of 2024, Jets running back Braylon Allen became the youngest NFL player to score a touchdown since 1930, doing so at 20 years, 7 months, and 26 days old. And not long after this, Braylon Allen scored another touchdown in that game, becoming the second youngest player to score a touchdown since 1930, since Braylon Allen scored a touchdown earlier in that game. Yeah, say that one 5 times fast. And meanwhile, that same week for the other New York football team, the Giants became the first team in NFL history to score 3 touchdowns, allow 0, and still lose the game in regulation, getting beat on a game-winning field goal with 4 seconds left against the Washington Commanders. There are 4 quarterbacks in NFL history with at least 3 games where they had both 450 plus passing yards and 4 plus touchdowns. Peyton Manning, who actually did this 4 times, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, and Jameis Winston. In 2007, the University of South Florida, a school in the Big East Conference located in Tampa, Florida, climbed all the way up to number 2 in the BCS rankings 6 games into their season. Almost unprecedentedly high territory for a small mid-major program in D1 college football. They wouldn't get to see their dream of a national championship through though, losing to Rutgers the week after being ranked number 2 in the country, then losing 2 more in a row to UConn and Cincinnati before finishing their season 9-4. Justin Herbert holds the record for most pass attempts in a game without throwing a touchdown, which he achieved in Week 6 of 2022 by having 57 passes and 0 touchdowns in a game against the Broncos. The 2001 Carolina Panthers went just 1-15 on the season, didn't get the first pick due to their horrible luck of being 1-15 the year before an expansion team swooped in to get the first overall pick, and it still worked out for them as the team was able to draft North Carolina native and greatest defensive lineman in team history 2nd overall, Mr. Julius Peppers. Bonus fact about the 2001 Panthers, they actually won their first game of the season before losing the remaining 15. Yikes. Brett Favre holds the record for most consecutive starts made in the NFL at 297, starting every game his team played from September 27, 1992 through December 5, 2010. And the record for most consecutive starts made by a defensive player was Jim Marshall at 270. The original name of the Raiders football team was announced as the Oakland Seniors, but everyone in Oakland hated it. So out of the backlash, the Raiders name and brand is what they ended up settling on. On November 2nd, 2024, a wide receiver named Jalen Walthall at the University of Incarnate Word, that is such a sick name for a school, celebrated a touchdown by seamlessly dropping into a headstand, and it caught on so fast that the next day, NFL receivers Drake London and Amon-Ra St. Brown were inspired to mimic it in their own games. The NFL record for most rushing attempts in a season is held by Larry Johnson, who carried the ball 416 times in 2006 for the Chiefs. And amazingly, the college record for carries in a season is even higher, as Kevin Smith rushed 450 times for UCF in 2007. What makes this even crazier is that Smith's extra 34 carries were earned in 2 fewer total games than Johnson set his NFL record with. Former New York Yankees owner and Seinfeld legend George Steinbrenner once tried to buy the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 1995 before losing out on them to what was, at that point, the highest price ever paid for a professional sports team. $192 million. To put that into perspective of today's money, just Jordan Love's contract is worth more than that amount. The Rose Bowl is the most recent stadium to host a Super Bowl that has never actually been the home of an NFL team when it hosted the Dallas Cowboys and Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl in 1993. Deion Sanders' signing bonus when joining the Dallas Cowboys was $12.999 million. Now, why is it the 999 versus just $13 million? Well, it's because Cowboys owner / general manager Jerry Jones found 13 to be an unlucky number and would not give him a $13 million bonus, so they settled on this instead. Over the course of his NFL career, Tom Brady held a record of 33-3 against the Buffalo Bills, his best against any particular team. There was only one team out of 32 in the NFL that beat Tom Brady more than he beat them in the regular season, and that was the Kansas City Chiefs, who Brady went 5-6 against. This 92-yard interception return for a touchdown by Leonard Williams is the longest pick six in NFL history, among any player who weighed 300 pounds or more. The record for the longest pick six in the entirety of the NFL is held by Ed Reed from a game against the Eagles in 2008. He ran a 107-yard pick six. The record for the most touchdowns between a receiver and QB duo together, including in the playoffs, is 114, held by Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison with the Indianapolis Colts. Julio Jones is the first and only player in NFL history with 3 different games with 250 receiving yards. All 3 happened in a 4-season span from 2014 through 2017 for the Atlanta Falcons. In 2001, St. Vincent Mary High School in Akron, Ohio, had a dominant tight end who racked up 51 catches for 1,160 yards and 16 touchdowns his junior year. But that tight end would never end up playing football again after that season. It's because his name was LeBron James, and he ended up being alright at a different sport, so he went with that one instead. The biggest contract in NFL history is a pretty obvious one. It's Patrick Mahomes. He signed a 10-year, $450 million contract back in 2020. He did, however, restructure it somewhat recently to have a $208.1 million guarantee. In the entirety of NFL playoff history, only 6 games have ever gone to double overtime. And since we're talking about overtime, you probably remember that this year's Super Bowl, as of recording this, went into overtime. But what you may not know is that this is only the second time this has ever happened in a Super Bowl. And another crazy part about this is that both of these overtimes happened within the last 10 years. The first one was 2017, and the last one was this year, 2024. The heaviest player in NFL history is Aaron Gibson, who played for the Detroit Lions, the Dallas Cowboys, the Chicago Bears, and the Buffalo Bills. After his time playing in the NFL, he focused more on his health and managed to slim down to 290 pounds. But during his time playing for the Dallas Cowboys, his official listed weight was 400 pounds. And on the opposite side of that coin, the lightest NFL player ever is BJ West, who signed to the Broncos in 2024. He's 5'8" and weighs 142 pounds. The record for the most rushing yards ever in a single season is held by Eric Dickerson back when he played for the Los Angeles Rams in 1984. In this one season, he racked up 2,105 rushing yards. And this was back when the amount of games for a regular season was 16. Nowadays, it's 17. This is particularly important because that means the record should theoretically be easier to beat because now you have a whole extra game to try to top this record. The reason I bring all this up is because it's extremely relevant right now as of recording this video because Saquon Barkley is currently at 2,000 yards, meaning if he gets 106 yards or more in this next game coming up, he will officially set the new record. That's pretty cool. The average amount of sacks per NFL game is about 2.5, and that's the average of sacks for both teams the entire game. So the fact that Derek Thomas holds the record for the most sacks in a single game by a single player with 7 in a game against the Seahawks in 1990 is pretty incredible. So incredible, in fact, that this record has stood for over 30 years. The Baltimore Ravens once had to change their original logo after 3 seasons because a court found that it had violated a copyright from an amateur artist in Maryland. In 2023, CeeDee Lamb set the NFL record for most games with 11 catches in a season with 7. He also had 3 straight games with 10 catches and 150 yards in 2023, the only player to ever do that in a season too. If you've ever heard your great-grandpa talk about an old Packers receiver named Don Hutson, here's why. He led the NFL in receiving touchdowns in 1935, 1936, 1937, 1938, 1940, 1941, 1942, 1943, and 1944. Why he didn't lead the NFL in 1939, who knows? Maybe he just wanted to take an off year from being the best. There have only been 33 left-handed quarterbacks in NFL history to this point, and currently only 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame. From 1966 through 1968, the Miami Dolphins had a real-life dolphin mascot trained to jump around a tank when the team scored. Her name was Flipper, and they got rid of her as the mascot after the 1998 season because seemingly everyone involved thought maintaining a live dolphin was a little too expensive. Devin Hester holds the NFL record for most non-offensive touchdowns in league history with 20. He's also the only player to ever have 2 return touchdowns in the same game twice. Robert Griffin III was the first athlete in the Big 4 American pro sports leagues to have Roman numerals on the back of his jersey. When Tennessee played Virginia Tech at Bristol Motorsports Speedway in 2016, they set the record for the highest attended football game in history, ending up with a final count of just 10 people shy of an even 157,000. Troy Aikman went 0-11 for his first season as quarterback for the Cowboys before eventually winning 3 Super Bowls for the team. Taysom Hill is the only NFL player since 1951 to have a pass completion, rushing touchdown, and kick return in the same game. He's also the only NFL player of the last 60 years with 10 passing, rushing, and receiving touchdowns to their name. Ahman Green, who was a 4-time Pro Bowler with over 9,000 rushing yards in the NFL, later became an esports coach at a college in Wisconsin.
Green says he's spent time with professional Madden players and has found pro gaming and pro football aren't that different.
The fastest NFL player to ever live was Bullet Bob Hayes. Not only did he win a Super Bowl and earn 3 trips to the Pro Bowl as a wide receiver with the Dallas Cowboys, but he also won 2 gold medals in sprinting in the Summer Olympics in Tokyo. He was the first man to run a 100-yard dash in 9.1 seconds, the first to better 6 seconds for the 60-yard indoor dash, and he briefly had the record of 2.5 seconds for the 200-meter dash. Man was quick. Just like any sport, the NFL has some weird, obscure rules that you'll probably never see anyone use. So here's a few of those. Possession after touchdowns. Basically, this rule means that the team that was just scored on can decide whether they want to receive or kick the ball. So technically, if a team just scored on you, you could theoretically just say, do it again. Snaps between the quarterback's legs. This basically means that if the quarterback misses the snap and it goes between his legs, he has to be the next one to touch it, no one else. So even if someone on the defense goes and touches it, it's considered a false start on the offense. Again, this one is very obscure, but it has been called before, the last time being a Bears-Eagles game in 2007. And finally, the last rule I want to cover is the fair catch free kick rule. This rule states, after a fair catch is made or is awarded as a result of fair catch interference, the receiving team has the option of putting the ball in play by snap or fair catch kick, drop kick, or place kick without tee, from the spot of the catch or succeeding spot after enforcement of any applicable penalties. And finally, this is the last fact that I will leave you with today. There are 4 teams who have never made it to a Super Bowl in the entirety of the NFL. And those teams are the Cleveland Browns, Detroit Lions, Houston Texans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Lions are the only team in the NFC to never make it to the Super Bowl, and all the other 3 teams are in the AFC. Sorry, boys. Maybe next year. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. As always, I really do appreciate it. And if you made it all the way to the end, comment some of your favorite random football facts that I might have missed. Or you could just comment, anything, just whatever. It just helps with the algorithm. I do genuinely want to hear some more football facts though, because I love making videos like this, and just hearing about these random little facts it's just fun. Anyways, have a lovely day, gamers. Peace.